How's it going, Raiders? My name is Ryan, and this is TRC episode 19. If you guys have been hanging out in a boss's crotch lately, or even for the duration of your entire WoW tenureship, well, good news. Today we are talking melee, DPS, and Antorus the Burning Throne. And with that being said, I believe everyone is ready, tanks. Pull timer on you.
The heroes have made it to the glorious finale.
Alright, here we go, guys. Sit up in your chairs, focus up. Let's do this.
Alright, guys, get buffed up.
Okay, so we want to soak the annihilations,
Get your shit together.
then we want to target the annihilator,
Put them big girl panties on.
move back to avoid damage from eradication,
I think I've disconnected.
then we target the decimator,
Can we pull already?
then we target boss.
I hope you can swim in molten lava.
Let's kill this dragon.
Well, looky there, we're on the screen. Marty, my man, joining us all the way from the land of the Danish. What's going on, brother?
The land of bacon. It's going fine. It's going pretty good. It's a weekend. What's not to like?
Yeah. You know, I had a question the other day. It was kind of a random thought that I kind of want to direct it towards you. I know you're kind of the anti-Irish. You don't like potatoes.
I'm anti-Danish.
Well, that was my question. Do all Danish people hate potatoes, or is it just a Marty thing?
No, that's just a Marty thing. Because I think the Danish likes potatoes as much as the Irish, to be honest. But I don't know. It's since I've been a little kid, it's never tasted me, and I feel like I have to throw up when I'm tasting like normal cooked potatoes. If it's like fries and it has seasoning or whatever, spices, or you can taste the potato, then I'm fine with it.
That's awesome. You know, we're just going to scrap all of the WoW talk today and dive deeper into the eccentricities of one Martin Lawrence. Or Larson. Yeah.
Let's talk about recipes you can make without potatoes. That's why you're here, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So otherwise, things have been good?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's been good. I've been avoiding potatoes. It's great.
We're just going to tell everybody you have an allergy. That way it's like somewhat logical, you know, and people don't have to like freak out. Yeah. Well, for those of you that are watching, you may recognize a laughter that is unrecognizable. And joining us today is a special guest, a good friend of mine who I have been playing WoW off and on with throughout this expansion, a Vedel. How's it going, buddy?
Going all right. Getting blasted by a blizzard currently.
Yeah, you're getting
it's
what we just
April.
got.
Yeah, it's April, and I'm getting more snow in the past 2 days, and I think we got all of them.
Yeah. Are you guys getting any snow, Marty?
We had our share of snow. I hope it's over now. But yeah, we up until last week, I think we had a lot of snow. So
Well, we thought the same thing. We just got pounded last night and today.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we did have like a few days where spring came and then the snow came back. So I think it's just a theme for the year. That surprise, we're not quite there yet, or something.
Yeah. I think Mother Nature's extending her April Fool's joke way too long.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, anyway, so Vedel, we're gonna bring you into the fold. You know, we've said who you are. You've said hello. Why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners really quickly, just kind of a brief overview of your history with WoW, how you and I kind of know each other, and where you're kind of currently at with the game.
So I've been playing World of Warcraft since Wrath of the Lich King. I've been raiding at a high level, starting towards the end of Cataclysm. Prior to that, I was a preteen who knew nothing. I've mostly tanked and healed on a paladin through all of the expansions. I started DPSing end of MOP as a mage, and then I, with great foresight, quit raiding during Warlords of Draenor and
good
came
on
back
you.
for the Legion. I played a paladin, a frost mage, a resto shaman, and now an enhanced shaman through all of Legion. I met Ryan at the start of Legion when I started raiding back up again.
You did
My rated eater.
Emerald Nightmare with another guild, and you came in with us at what, TOV and Nighthold?
I came in during the TOV, kind of when we were waiting for Nighthold to come out. I actually hadn't raided prior to that, really.
Okay.
After I was deciding if I wanted to get back into that whole thing. Plus, at the time, I was still tanking, because I had tanked for a long time as a paladin. Finding it,
We may have just lost Vedel.
I think so.
Okay,
That's
well,
the
no big deal. The qualms of doing a show live. Well,
I
we
was
would.
about to say, thank God we're not live, right?
Yeah, right. Looks like he's getting a little lag. He is getting a storm. So, if that is the case, we will just kind of continue on and wait for him to get back.
you guys hear me?
Yeah. Okay, he's
Oh,
back.
there we go.
Great.
Yeah.
Where was I?
You were just kind of talking about how you hadn't raided prior to joining up with us, and we were kind of waiting for Nighthold to come out and hanging out in TOV.
Yeah, so at that point I met Ryan, and then everything, guild fell apart in my current guild for end of TOV, not end of TOV, end of Tomb, and the start of Antorus.
Yeah, yeah. And then I actually recently had been raiding with Vedel in his current guild, and then I left to another guild in hopes to get Mythic Argus down sooner than later so that I could focus on some projects over here at TRC. And then I'm also finishing school, so it's off to being an adult again for the second time around. But yeah, so Vedel and I have been playing together off and on quite a bit since throughout the duration of this expansion. And just kind of have kept in touch. And I figured I would bring Vedel on today as a melee DPS because he seems to know his shit more often than not compared to other players. So I figured for those of you listening, he would be a good resource. But other than that, Vedel, last I left you guys were we were at the time, were 5 of 11, working on Iminar. But you guys have since down Iminar and Kingaroth, yeah,
Kingaroth.
right?
We're currently working on Vermothras. That should have died Thursday or yesterday, but he should definitely die tonight. It's one of those fights where it's like, okay, everyone knows what they're doing. Now you just have to avoid stepping 1 yard too far.
Yeah.
And we just keep having those people just step a little too far.
Yeah. Yep. So with that being said, Marty, last I spoke to you, you were working on Ingaroth as well, correct?
No,
No? Where were you guys?
Imonar.
I thought you guys had downed Iminar.
No.
Okay, have you
No,
downed
we're
him?
still working on it.
Still working on him? Okay.
Yeah.
Attendance issues?
We had some issues with people showing up, and Easter as well, including myself. I was away for Easter, so and then we had one raid where I think everything just went wrong, basically. So we didn't get as far as we wanted to, and then this week I was on standby. Because we have had a lot of we have recruited a lot of healers because we'd rather have a rotation for healers instead of having to cancel a raid here and there because healers are not able to show up. So I was on standby, and I don't know if that was a sign that we got him to 3% then, or what. So hopefully he should be going down next week.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys get him down. Because the really fun bosses, in my opinion, are yet to come for you guys. Some of the later bosses, starting kind of with Kingaroth, in my opinion. Well, even Iminar. If with a good, once you kind of get the strat down, the fight can be really fun. There's a lot going on. And I actually, so just I kind of take a step back and bring everybody up to speed. The guild I'm currently with, a trial, now a member. Last week we got Coven down and the prior week we got Coven down, and then last week we spent the entirety of last week working on Agrimar progression. This week we actually reset the instance and brought some new trials in. But so that being said, kind of like I was saying, Vermothras, there's really not much else to it. Because I'm an elemental shaman, I get the lucky pleasure of pooling my maelstrom and dumping all of my earth shocks into the ads as they spawn. So I don't actually get to do a lot of DPS since I'm the only elemental shaman in our raid group. So me and the frost mage, we're on ad duty. But other than that, the fight's really not different. But Coven is a lot of fun. I actually enjoy Coven on Mythic way more than I do on Heroic and Normal. And there's probably some room to test that to the fact that this group is way more organized than any other time I've done the fight on heroic or normal. Because otherwise it's a shit show and I just hate the fight. But this time it was actually kind of fun. But enough about me. Vedel, let's bring the show back to you since you are today's special guest. So you've been raiding with us since TOV. You hadn't raided prior to that point. We are at the end of this expansion. We're just waiting for BFA to come out now. Now I know you haven't killed Mythic Agrimar, but you have cleared the dungeon, at least on heroic. So taking all of that into account, have you liked this expansion so far?
I think it's been a good expansion, and I think everyone would agree that the bosses, for the most part, have been really good. Good variants outside of um, Emerald Nightmare, where it was all single target. I do have my gripes against the fact that there's only been one boss that was a two-target cleave where melee could participate. Um, but other than that, I think done a good job with variety. My biggest issue is, as with everyone, has been legendaries.
Yeah. Would you say legendaries were more problematic than the AP system?
I think the AP system at the start was a problem, but it got to the point where it just didn't matter for the majority of us. Getting like for Antorus, getting to 70, 75 wasn't that big of a deal at the start. Um, Compared to the first time I came around, okay, I gotta max this artifact out as fast as I can. Um, I
Yeah.
think they shifted away from it being important rather quickly. Compared to legendaries, I can pick up an alt, and well, I still gotta farm them.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd have to say I agree with you. And Marty probably understands this as well as being an officer. One of the struggles we had with the guild when you first joined up with me in this expansion was we just always had a handful of people who just couldn't be bothered to get their AP up to snuff. And then so like for me from thinking from an officer standpoint and having still the kind of that mindset going on, with all these catch up mechanics, and now it's like if you're kind of even a casual player, if you don't have 75 traits, like what are you doing? Which is nice because everybody can get it now. So you don't have to really worry about those people who can only devote 2 raid nights. Maybe give or take a few extra hours here and there. So that's nice. So yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Um, Now we haven't actually talked about this
For
on.
for
Yeah.
for 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 me, I also felt like because I'm not really that much into grinding. I really hate it
Mm-hmm.
with a passion. So all of a sudden have to grinding AP to because I'm an officer, so I have to be like a good example for everybody, right? So having to actually have that extra pressure to do something that I find absolutely boring, mindlessly boring, that was not really fun for me, to be honest. And I'm a little bit I'm looking forward to BFA, but I'm a little bit skeptical about that whole grind that is going to go on there as well. I want to see how that works out. Hopefully,
Yeah,
it's a little bit better system.
yeah, I'm glad they figured out the whole artifact knowledge weekly. You don't have to deal with that mechanic. I think that'll make Battle for Azeroth so much better. Right now, you can get an alt up, do a couple things. You're at 69. Okay, now I have to actually do work, but
Hmm,
significantly better.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um. Now we haven't talked about this on the show, to my knowledge, and Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just kind of came to mind and was gonna kind of get your guys' take on this. Do you think the legendary catch-up system with the essences, being able to spend 1,000 essences to get a random legendary, has been good? And strictly speaking, from a main standpoint, because I know on me, like I'm doing it all for my alts at this point. But from a main perspective, we like in our guild, we trialed a few people. And we're likely going to bring in a few guys, and like one of them, he's a really good player mechanically and DPS wise, but I noticed he doesn't have the best in slot legendaries. And it doesn't look like he even has like Pride as for like a progressive, encounter. So what are your thoughts so far on the 1,000 essences? You think this is a day late and a dollar short from Blizzard? That was good timing, just in general here. I guess we'll start with you, Vidal.
I think it's at least something. I think it has its issues. I think it's too slow. I think the fact that it pushes you into daily heroics, and again, you're doing daily repetitive things that you lose on if you don't log into. I don't like that. I don't think rating is nearly reward enough. I personally believe clearing one Antorus should get you almost the way to a legendary. Because if you get bad luck, it's a month of grinding that stuff out just to get a couple legendaries, and if they're all bad, you might not have even gotten a random drop in there.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think for a main that has been playing the same main for the whole expansion, the system doesn't really matter too much. I had all my legendaries that I needed at that point anyway. I had all my mains big ones at least. For a player who is trying to catch up, it's all right. I think I still think it's too slow, as Vedel also said. So yeah, but for main, I think it's not really anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one more thing, I don't like that it shares the upgrade with getting pieces. We had some raiders who had legendary items that they need to upgrade to 1,000, but they didn't have their best in slot. And like one of them was an enhanced shaman at that time. He didn't have the gloves. Well, does he upgrade, or does he wait to try and get the legendary gloves, which fixes a lot of the rotation?
Because the upgrade is what, 300, and then the random legendary is 1,000.
Yeah, so you can basically upgrade 3 for the cost of 1.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's only been a tiny issue on my alt because we do alt rates as well, and I have that same issue where I'm like, I don't have my best in slot, but I have these, and should I upgrade them or should I keep my currency around for the 1,000 because it is an alt, so I don't play it too much, but again, it's an alt, so it's a minor issue when it comes to that, but it is definitely an issue for someone like whose main it is that's lacking that best in slot.
Well, and I guess I didn't think about it from that perspective, but it's absolutely true. And I remember having that same thought when I was playing my alt, and kind of up the same dilemma. I hadn't touched him in 2 tiers of rating, and so I had 2 legendaries. They're total crap ones, but same thing. I was kind of presented with the dilemma: do I upgrade them, or do I wait for the random one of hoping to get one of my best in slots? So yeah. So do you? I guess the other question here. Do you think Blizzard should have implemented this type of system earlier in the expansion, or do you think the timing was good?
I don't like the system, so I can't say having it sooner would make me
Fair enough.
happier.
I think it would have been nice to be able. I think the issue is that there's no real good way to target a specific legendary. And I think if they had made some way where you could target specific legendaries, I think that would have improved this whole system immensely. But that also maybe then you can maybe raise the question: why do you then have all the bad ones if you can just select the one that you want? So
yeah, and there's a part of me that they put the system in and then they stopped balancing legendaries. It feels like to me, because for a while you saw them changing them all the time, and now it's just kind of like, okay, these are the best in slots that everyone uses.
Well, the thought I always had was like, at what point does Blizzard cut their losses and realize that balancing legendaries in hopes to bring the terrible ones up to snuff so people will want them is never going to happen. So you might as well just provide players with a way to target legendary. And it seemed like they kept trying to band-aid the problem and ultimately you're never going to fix it in the way that you want. That was always my thought. But
I don't get why they did this system to begin with, because it's been an issue with legendaries, right? It's always been an issue, even when it was like one class got a legendary, because then everybody wanted to play that class, or you would only bring that class if they had the legendaries or things like that, and then the whole balancing issues and things like that. That's when they went into Legion. So why did they do this? I don't get it.
Yeah, to me, it felt like a goal they could never achieve, because you had the 2 types of legendaries, right? You had the one person gets it, it's really powerful, the raid group needs it, but if that person's disappears on the group, you're screwed. Then there's the one person, it's a drop, it's super rare, you're super lucky to get it. Well, I'm sorry, those are the same, but then you had the MOP version and the WOD version where everyone had it, you spent months grinding for it. It didn't feel that great when you got it. It was like, it's done, it's over, thank God. I feel like they tried to combine those 2 things where, okay, everyone has this, but it's also super powerful. And it just feels like that's not something you were ever going to achieve putting together, because you make something that everyone has that's super powerful, but you have there's a whole bunch of different ones. Like, there's gonna be something that's better. It's World of Warcraft. There's always a mathematically best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of the things that we've talked a lot about as well is that you have two different kinds of legendaries right now. You have the power boost, and then you have the utility legendaries. And I think if you really want this to work out, you should probably look somewhere along the lines where you only have utility legendaries, where it does some cool thing, cool effect, cool, I don't know, something that makes your play style a little bit different, something like that. But when you have the power boost ones in the mix as well, then obviously that's where everybody will go to, right? Everybody wants to do the most DPS, most healing, or what? I don't know what tanks do. What do tanks do?
It
They just sit there.
depends on your tank and
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
want to work DPS wise.
Well, Jeffrey's off in the corner again doing nothing. You know, the other thing I noticed too is like, when Vedel came into the fold of the guild that I was raid leading, and an officer in, we were struggling to get to the point where we wanted to be in the game, and by that I mean our ultimate goal was always to be a Mythic guild. We wanted to be on a more casual basis compared to most Mythic guilds, but we still wanted to be a Mythic guild, and we struggled with that, and so we mainly hung out in Heroic and Normal. And then with the next group I was in, you know, we were getting past the first couple of bosses in Mythic, which we were doing on occasion with the guild that Vedel and I were in. And that guild, you know, we hung out in the first, depending on the raid, the first 3 to 5 bosses, you know, the give me bosses. And then I joined up with Vedel's group, and we kind of got past some of that. And then I'm in the group I'm in now, and we're way past that. But the thing I've noticed, be it in raids or in Mythic Pluses, is in the lower difficulty areas. So what would be parallel to Heroic and Normal in any in-game situation, I've never had a situation where I've needed to use the utility legendaries, with the exception of Sefu's, right? So I've never ever had a point where I've wanted to use Pride as, and people have always been like, well, you should use Pride as on a progression fight. Like, I understand it's a progression fight, but it's Heroic difficulty, and I can tell you right now, if we are dying, it's either one of two situations. The healers went to sleep, or I was standing in bad stuff. It was never from a standpoint of
So the last thing then.
Right, yeah. But it was never from a situation of I don't have enough health. We're arguably doing this content with being under geared, like you would see with some of the Mythic race guilds. So I would want to use a Pride as. And if I did use a Pride as, or another utility legendary for that matter, like the male healing pants on hunters and shamans, I lost out on DPS because I didn't have the Mythic gear. Well, now that I have, you know, I'm 975 on my shaman, and I was doing a plus 20 Mythic Plus the other day, I actually had to use Pride as in a few of the parts of the dungeon, but I was still holding my own with my DPS. And it seems like you go from this gap of being able to only use, or only wanting to use, your best in slot legendaries for every absolute situation, because you're in Heroic and Normal equatable situations in in-game content, to all of a sudden there's this huge jump. You're now super geared. You're actually going to want to use these utility things. And I think from Blizzard's standpoint, if you want people to use these legendaries, you shouldn't have that gap. You shouldn't have that divide. But we could talk legendaries all day long. But that's
Please
not.
don't.
Yeah, right. That's a rabbit hole we've tried to avoid all expansion, and it's never, you know, it's always there. You're always stepping in it. But so let's go ahead and jump into the melee talk here. Vedel, now I know you have said that you have tanked, you've healed, you've ranged DPS, and now you're melee DPS. And I know, are you still swing healing from time to time?
Occasionally, I've asked not to, and for some reason we're able to recruit healers, but not DPS. So we're good on healers right now, which is good because I don't like the state of Resto Shaman currently, but I'm really enjoying melee. It's the first time I've really rated as melee. I've always had alt melee. It's a good tier, I think, for melee.
Yeah, how's it
It's
smell up in the
not
boss's crotch?
challenging. Okay, I have to correct you on that. Tanks get the crotch, melee DPS get the ass.
So you arguably have the worst smelling end of things.
Yes.
All right, fair enough. There's a few fights where you want to be in front of the boss, but you are right.
Yes,
For the most part, you're hanging out in the boss's booty hole area. So you're liking melee DPS, and kind of the reason I like the idea of bringing you into the fold is I think the notion that you've played the different roles kind of gives you a better perspective of things. Like you're not so tunnel vision focused on this is what I need to know. This is all I know. I think you're more adaptable to situations, just because you do have a more extensive knowledge set from this current year of expansions. But you've liked playing melee DPS so far in Antorus.
Yes, I've really enjoyed it. Again, I think it's also a melee forgiving tier compared to some in the past. Um,
And that's so funny you say that because this whole raid is like if you are not a dot range DPS, forget it. You know what I mean? Like so many of these
Well,
fights favor the cleave classes.
yeah, so when we're talking DPS wise and parsing and ranks and all of that, I'm not overly ecstatic about how many times they've, there's I think 3 fights here where they've said, okay, here's 2 bosses. Oh, by the way, they can't be next to each other. Just give
Right.
me one. Let me just have fun on one fight. I know I'm still not gonna win, but let me look good. Not have the 80 million DPS difference between me and the Affliction Shaman.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. So, are there any fights in the raid so far that as a melee DPS you just despise?
Um, I despise ENR.
Yeah.
Coven. I don't like on heroic. It's not terrible, but I have a feeling I'm going to despise this fight on Mythic. Um, it the mechanics are not going to be fun to handle. It might be the fight I play Elemental on.
Yeah, if you guys are heavy in any sort of way with melee, and when I say heavy, I mean like if you have anything more than 3 to 5 melee, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, we're moving up to 6 or 7 melee,
Ooh.
which is not fun. We used to have 2 to 3. Um, we lost our like 7 hunters, which is fantastic. I get more loot.
Yeah, yeah. Especially during the lightning ads, you guys are really gonna have to find space to spread out. And then if you add on top of that, you've got to get out of the storm. Melee definitely has a bit more of fine tuning necessity.
Yeah, it's
That
it's
fight.
definitely one of those fights where when you're target swapping, I would can just tab target and rotate instead of run halfway across the room. You at some points you touch all 4 walls of that room, and it's a lot of time running.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I guess we will just jump right into the rundown. So let's start with Garathi. And just for anybody who might be new joining the stream today, I'm seeing there's a handful of listeners watching the show right now. The typical idea behind this next segment is we walk through each boss in this raid, and we kind of talk at the boss from the perspective of what are some tips and tricks or important things to know from that role specific perspective. So obviously today we're going to be talking from the perspective of a melee DPS. So Vedel is going to be kind of going through some tips or tricks, and then Marty and I will jump in as we notice things or whatever as well. That might be some useful information for players who are, who might be struggling or just want to know more or are thinking about jumping into the raid scene. And so Vedel is obviously going to be able to talk from a mythic perspective for a lot of the bosses, but once we get to the point where he's kind of at his end of his progression currently, he will talk from the heroics, the perspective, and then we will just kind of fill in the gaps if we can for what we do know from boss guides, videos, whatever. But that's going to be the idea for today, just for those of you that are new watching today. So without further ado, let's talk Garathi. From a mythic standpoint, what's it like being a melee DPS, and what are some things people should kind of look out for or know?
So being a melee DPS on this isn't that much different from being a ranged DPS. You're just up next to the boss. Your group will have most likely decided at what point an annihilate spawn is responsible for melee or ranged. Um, Sometimes, at least in my group, that point changes, so one won't get soaked and we yell at each other. But basically, at this point, make sure you're soaking annihilates. Do go out and get those far ones if it looks like range isn't going to get it. You're not going to have perfect uptime on this boss. If you've been doing farm a couple times, designate a couple melee who can stay in and not deal with that mechanic for parses, but otherwise, soak annihilates. It's pretty easy to dodge. Decimate as a melee, you don't lose damage uptime from moving. If you're melee and you get hit by the beams during the cannon phase, you're again screwing up because you can do damage on the move here. Um, you can press your AoE cleave on the cannons to get higher DPS. That's not helpful. But otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward fight. Um, if you have a bunch of fail kitties, make them soak everything because they have range.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to correct you on one thing you said there. I think even from a progression standpoint, Garothi is a parse whore.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. I am prone to hitting Crash Lightning when both cannons are down, even though it's technically a single target DPS loss.
I do the same with my
but
shaman. I save
this-
Stormkeeper.
Yeah, this is definitely the fight where it's like, all right, I'm gonna look good on this fight because I just get to hit the boss.
Yeah. There was kind of a thing that stood in my mind. If important for melee to know, and this is kind of not necessarily important for melee to know, but it's also important for range and melee to kind of both be watching out for. Every now and then there will be decimates. They're kind of in no man's land. And what I mean by that, they're kind of in a place where it's like, does the melee go get it or does the range go get it? And if you're in a group that doesn't completely outgear this fight, there's sometimes that could potentially wipe half your group and kill the fight, whatever. So especially with melee, a lot of times those decimates tend to be off to the left, over by where the path of the tanks run when they're running their debuff out. If your group does in fact run them out to the left. So if that is the case, if you are a melee that has a a blink of some sort or a movement ability or whatever, and same thing with range from that standpoint as well. Be ready to help your group out and jump over there and grab those, especially during the double soak period, which is the last phase, depending on which weapon you kill.
During our progression, we definitely kind of said, okay, demon hunters, monks, warriors, it's your job to get those ones that are way out there. Our Death Knight, he's not gonna make it. Like, he might as well just stay on the boss and get the one that's near it. As an enhanced shaman, I'll try, but half the time I'm almost there and it explodes.
Yeah.
So if you have movement speed, watch for those. Not all of the melee need to soak that one annihilate next to the boss.
And I feel like there's something to be said for what you just brought up that a lot of groups miss. There's always going to be little things that your group is either going to manage or not manage, just depending on your group. And often at times, it's the little things that you choose not to manage that end up being the thing that screw you from time to time. Like any group I've been in, with the exception of your group, Vedel, no one has ever designated certain classes to be the ones that go get those random notes. And every now and then we get these wipes and everybody's yelling like, why did nobody go get that? You guys have to make sure. Well, it'd be kind of better if you signed like a mage or a demon hunter to solely be responsible for dealing with those ones if they're up. But so for those of you guys who might be listening, just a advice, you might want to have a class with a movement ability, whether it's melee or range, assigned to deal with those. But other than that, I think, Marty, do you have anything to add? This fight seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is pretty straightforward, and I mean, it's better. It's always better to have one too many than one too little in soaking. So if you can make it, then do it.
Cool. Let's move on to the Dogies. Vedel, what's you get about 10 seconds, depending on if your group stacks them together before they get big, to go ham.
Yeah, about 10 seconds where I kind of look good, but I don't have great bursts. So, if we stack them together, it's nice. Convince your group to do that. I got really tired of running towards the wrong dog and wasting 5 seconds of lust. But definitely convince your group to stack them together. Yell at your tanks if they spread them out too far. Ours are prone to doing that. I know it's going to help the affliction lock that we don't want to do good, but no one wants to be in this fight too long.
Yeah. And I think you made a really good point there, and I have to stop you just for a second. You made the comment that you don't want to run towards the wrong boss and have to switch. He's not saying that he's forgetting to pay attention to his debuff. He's saying that it takes 5 to 10 seconds, arguably, for the bosses to assign you a buff on Mythic, so to know which dog to go towards. So if your tanks don't stack them from the start, and you as a melee, you have to pick one. Otherwise, you stand there for 10 seconds with your thumb up your ass. If you go to a dog and all of a sudden you're assigned the buff on the other boss, then you have to run all the way across the room. So it might be a good idea because most groups lost during that period too. So thanks, please stack them together, help your melee out.
Yeah, when we were doing progression, we didn't stack them, so it was about a 50-50 shot that
Mhm.
I'm running at purple dog. I get 2 buffs up, and then I have to go sprint over to fire and get in position.
Yeah.
That's one of those uptime things where, as a former tank, it's one of those things you learn um, to keep things moving for your melee, make it so they can always hit something as best as possible.
Yeah.
Um, Other things on this boss, I want to stress that if you're on the fire dog and you have the fire debuff, you don't need to run as far as you think you do. There are little red circles that spawn. They're a little hard to see, but they're in the purple, so they should stand out. You just need to move to the left of those and stop. You don't need to keep running. Your tank should only need to backpedal. Shouldn't need to strafe and move that dog. That should let you get better uptime on the boss. Um, Same thing for keeping uptime. Inflamed, you don't need to run away. Melee should spread out around the inside of the boss. Range need to get away from you. If you have too many melee where you can't spread around the boss, you should probably consider changing your comp, or you got really unlucky debuffs.
Yeah. All very valid points. And again, this boss is pretty straightforward, like Vedel was saying. Just for me, the one thing I've noticed, because a lot of the times in this fight, there's really not a huge differentiation between melee and ranged, with the exception of like your shadow priests, your warlocks, and your boomkins, just because most of the time you're needing to stack and hang out in the same area as the melee.
Yeah, the
Um,
positioning is very similar. Melee has the advantage of you're almost always in range of the boss to hit it. So you should look good on this fight, Melee. There's no reason you really shouldn't like this boss, other than you have to move occasionally.
yeah, and like what I was gonna say was that the one thing to note is don't freak out when you have to move on this boss, because freaking out could cause a situation where you're going to be too far away to get back to helping stack for the purple boss when you need to be stacked to share the damage, or on the fire boss you could be putting fire in a much larger portion of the room than need be. You don't, just because it's time to move for the fire boss doesn't mean you need to like take off running right away. Wait till the orange circles appear under your feet and then move. You have a bit of a delay to get out of them. But yeah. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
the biggest tip I have for Melee, those of you who don't have great movement, your DKs, um, when save your movement stuff for if you get molten. You're gonna get tossed over a flame patch. You're gonna need to use that and a cooldown to get out of there alive. And at that point, that's where you're like, okay, it's every man for himself. Get out of there, get back to the group.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Really not much else to say for this boss unless you have something to add, Marty.
No, I'm the range scum standing in the back. So
You're the healer complaining that they can't heal anyone while they're on fire dog.
yeah, exactly.
Are you?
Play
You listen to
priest,
the
right?
show?
Yeah. You're playing holy for that boss, aren't you, Marty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
then it's
always playing
definitely you.
Yeah, it is definitely.
So let's talk third boss here. Which could be one of three. Vidal, your pick, man. Dealer's choice. Which one do you want to talk about?
Well, let's just go to high command.
All
Knock
right.
it out of the park.
Go for it.
Couple tips I have here. Melee's gonna be up close. You're gonna be getting mines on the group. Melee, you should stack at one point. Any mines that hit you have to be healed through. The biggest issues that you can cause for your healers are doing what I call the melee dance. Don't be up there dancing around, jumping around like a lot of the melee do. Go up, stand together, stand at one point. Next time you move is when you move grenade out, get back to the stack point, and then get to the next boss. You might occasionally, if a range decides to stack with you, have to dodge the spinning ads, but for the most part, don't be doing the melee dance. You're gonna pop extra mines. Just stack one point. Should be quite simple. It also means that you're gonna get that ad, hopefully near you, the pyromancer, because it'll most, unless your tanks are smart and are picking it up, it's gonna run to someone in melee. For interrupting that, I like to just use a macro to target it, interrupt it, throw on one of my other spells a target back at the boss. Make it super simple to just interrupt that, get back to the boss. That's pretty much it for high command for melee. The bats that you're responsible for are gonna die for cleave. You just get to cleave the ads. You don't need to worry about baiting anything out. You're gonna be under the shields. It's a pretty straightforward fight. Um, if you're trying to push parses, make sure you're watching when those ads are gonna charge in, so you can get your cleave AOE rolling when they're up with the group.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, it's because it's melee. It's a pretty straightforward fight. And healers got to keep you alive. Right? It doesn't matter if I get hit by those blades forever.
Well, with that being said, that was kind of the point I was going to bring up. I wasn't going to provide any sort of tips for melee. I was going to provide an FYI for the ranged is help your melee out on this fight. Don't screw them. Like, don't be right up on them on any of the portals unless you're supposed to be stacking for the shields. With the exception of the third portal, because there should be no ads up at that period of time, right? But in the first,
stack with melee and heal them is all I'm hearing.
yeah.
Yeah, push your parse.
Bait the spinning blades on top of melee. Yeah, because in the first pod, guys, first and second pods, if you're ranged and you're not getting out of there when the shield isn't up, or if you're just in general on the first pod because there are no shields, you're gonna bait the spinning blades on top of melee, and then not only do they have to leave or do they die, but your group loses out on DPS, which puts you behind, especially in Mythic. You need to be doing a certain percentage of health to the boss on each pod.
Yeah,
Help
and
your melee out.
the melee never gets targeted by that. So if it goes up there, we know it was arranged standing up there, and that you have no business being up there.
Right. Not much else to say for there. So we'll save the Vedel's hated one for the last of the next three.
Thank you.
3, 4, and 5. We will talk Portal Keeper here. Now you're going up, obviously. I think there's only a few melee that would stay down. And for those listening, for the melee, if you're for your respective raid group, if you're a DK, Frost DK, or a Feral Kitty, and sometimes you'll see some warriors staying down. Or I've yet to raid with a combat rogue in this raid, but I could see maybe where they might stay down.
It would be impressive if you did.
Right.
They don't exist.
Yeah. But other than that, most melee are going up, so I will let Vedel take it from here.
This is a really straightforward fight for melee. Your biggest challenge is going to be barrage. As melee, it's a little bit harder to move for because you can't just run into the sides. As someone who also healed this, I preferred healing to dodge barrage. But as melee, a couple things is don't be afraid to stand in a barrage that's coming to then hop back into a barrage that just went out. Occasionally there isn't going to be a safe spot. Otherwise, you're going to hug those safe spots up in the corners and by the tanks. There isn't a tank cleave mechanic, so you're fine being up there with the tanks. Save your cooldowns for the platforms. You should be getting up there pretty quickly and killing those ads quickly. A couple of you will probably be running debuffs over. If you're a rogue, have fun with that. For the ads that are spawning down below, try to help on the imps, but it's really hard being that they're going to be running around all the place, and if you don't have great AoE, like for me, I have to set up Crash Lightning, which involves things being in front of me. Sometimes that I just can't get rolling. So if you're one of those people, I say actually focus the spiders and the hounds. We don't talk about it enough, but the ranged, especially if you have Valley Shamans, they're going to take care of those imps just fine. Those hounds and those spiders can screw over tanks. Spiders will root them. They might get stuck in a barrage. So if you're not great AoE, I would focus those down. If your group has issues with imps, obviously focus them down. Throw your stuns out. You have interrupt. Get really upset with your ranged when there's a nice cluster of imps and they typhoon them. You're like, I had that. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward fight. There'll be an interrupt rotation up on Hazabel. That's important, but other than that, it's a really straightforward fight for melee. Save your cooldowns for those platforms, get those down, and that boss will fall over.
Yeah, you and I are gonna differ there because I'm gonna be telling melee to leave the freaking imps alone. You're killing my parse. You know, just run over and interrupt it, but don't kill it. Like, leave it to me.
Yeah, my group has been, we've lost our elemental shaman and a couple of our strong AoE, so imps have been an issue recently. So it's kind of just been everyone leaves the boss and deals with the imps when it's not platform time, which normally involves me running over, pressing Crash Lightning, Storm Strike, and a Lava Lash, and then running back to the boss.
You guys still have your feral druid?
Yes, we still have our Feral Druid who destroys things.
Yeah.
But other than that, we've been having recruitment issues and people not showing up. So, Hasbel has also always been a bad boss for this group. We spent a heroic farm night wiping to Hasbel after we had killed it for a month. That was fun.
Well, and you're kind of at the point once you get to this boss and moving forward. You know, ENR you could probably get by without, but you know, Portal Keeper, and then you know from MNR on, your raid composition actually matters.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so this, you know, you could have a full 20 group of competent players, but if they're all playing certain classes that are not conducive to that fight, it can make the fight really difficult. Which we can address later. But so yeah, other than that, Marty, you got anything to add for here, Portal Keeper with melee?
No, the only thing I have to say is that I finally, because we did an alt raid, I finally got to see the platforms. So
Yeah.
I've seen both parts now. Yeah, it's pretty dope up there with
Yeah.
mini fridges and pool tables and everything. So all
Yeah,
you
we
guys
go
should
up there,
stay down.
Just hang
we
out.
crack open a beer,
Yeah,
Sit on the couch, eat some
watch the
popcorn.
melee and the range and the healers have fun.
yeah. So
Good, stay up there. Leave my freaking imps alone, jerks. Yeah, cool. Not much else to say, so we will move on to Vedel's hated fight. We will talk ENR. With melee, Vedel, what's there to know other than just be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there?
The reason I hate the fight is what you should know. The one ad that really is going to be an issue is the purifiers.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that we found out. It took a long time to figure this out. But the tanks need to physically hit the purifiers. They can't taunt them. That does not make them active. As an enhanced shaman with Fury of the Air, I was consistently killed by purifiers because they would target me when I would get within 8 yards of them. And the tank's like next to me, and I'm like, okay, he's hit the boss, I can attack. And I just fall over. That's the reason I hate this boss.
Yeah.
It's one of the most annoying mechanics I've ever seen. Is an ad that doesn't respond to a taunt, but has an aggro table.
Three
we had that
Sundries, Vedel.
happen.
3 Sundries. Wait for it.
Three Thunders. Yeah. No, we had that happen yesterday, last night as well in our alt raid, and people were all of a sudden like, "Oh my God, we don't have a healer down here," and I'm just standing there as the healer and being like, "No, you guys are hitting it before the tankers. It's your own bloody fault."
Yeah, it's a one hit. Like if it hits me, I'm dead.
You're gone. Yeah.
And it's enhanced shaman. One of the things that I'm not used to is I have 8 yards of damage. I'm always 8 or 5. I can't remember. I have damage spinning around me constantly. And it took me a while to realize, oh, I'm hitting him because I just walked near it. And our tank is only taunting from 30 yards away, not throwing his weapon.
Yeah.
The other thing to know on those purifiers, the side they raise their arm up on is the side that he's going to hit the damage on. It's a telegraphed attack. We haven't seen too many of them since Mist of Pandaria when they're really prevalent, but it's pretty straightforward to dodge. Occasionally, it will bug out when it does happen. Just ask your tank to move the boss to add forward. Typically, that'll reset the animation, and he'll start raising his arms again. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward fight. You move with your ranged groups. You go up for Final Doom. Save your cooldowns there. That's probably, it looks to me, the heaviest healing part. Our groups always get a little low up there. make sure you're interrupting right away. Don't let too many casts get off. You should have a rotation there. It's okay to delay the Mind Blast interrupt, but you should, I think it's rack or whatever it's called, where it starts shooting things out right away. You want to interrupt that ASAP, which is a little bit different than a lot of interrupts nowadays. If you have the blue debuff, you should just stay in melee. You're going to silence people when it goes off. But if you're in melee, you're not going to. Your chances of silencing someone are much lower because ranged and healers should not be with you. If you're trying to run those out, you're most likely going to hit someone. There's a lot of other moving parts. It's a lot better if you just say, we're in melee. Ranged healers, stay out of melee.
Yeah.
It really feels like you don't like us.
I like you guys alive and able to heal me. I also like to be. This was actually a big thing in our guild because we have a Mistweaver who likes to be up in melee. And I had to he was consistently complaining about being silenced. And I said, the strategy for this is that, melee's up here. The reason we give it to melee is so we don't have to run out and deal with it. Because we can't be silenced, so it doesn't affect our rotation. So you can hit everyone. It doesn't matter. And I was like, okay, you need to get out of the group so you can still heal. Because otherwise I'm running out and I'm going to hit people. I've had the other debuffs. I run out, I hit other people because the platforms are tiny. So
Yeah.
I love my healers. They keep me alive. I'm an enhanced shaman. I need a lot of healing.
Yeah, we are squishy. Well, any shaman for that matter, squishy. Hunters too. Like, what is Blizzard? Why? Like, why are male characters more squishy than cloth or leather wearers?
Right.
We have more natural based armor. Like, I don't get it. Anyways, the last thing I would add here is for ENR, and this kind of goes for everybody. Understand why you are present in the group for that fight. If you were there for AoE, you're there for AoE. If you were there for single target, you're there for single target. I get it. Everybody wants to parse, and most every single DPS class in the game is going to do bigger numbers when they get to AoE. That's just, AoE is AoE. But if you are melee, and there's an AoE group up at the same time as a single target one, and you have to make that decision. Some people are going to go deal with the AoE group. Some people are going to deal with the single target group. Chances are you're going to be assigned to the single target group, so go do your single target group thing. You know what I mean? Because and there are going to be times in this fight too where groups are going to be split between up, down, middle, whatever, and you're going to have a big ad up at the same time you have a bunch of little ads. It's okay to let some things go by at times. You'll deal with them later on in their pathing. Every group I've been a part of, that's where they get into trouble, is they tend to freak out and everybody wants to go deal with the AoE stuff right away. Well, there's going to be different situations where either different people are assigned to deal with that, or that's going to be assigned to be dealt with later. You're going to want to deal with that single target thing first. So just listen to your callouts, listen to your strategy, and don't freak out if a couple of ads get by. Just do the strat. And the last thing I would add is don't stand in the middle of the freaking walkways. When you guys drop the fell on the ground, it speeds the ads up. So melee sometimes doesn't get an option, but range especially. Into the sides,
Yeah, so on that single target multi-target thing, unless you're like a really great burst AoE like Feral Druids, but I think they run Brutal Slash anyways because of the ads.
Right.
You want to spec single target. This is a ranged AoE fight. You're rarely gonna get time, especially depending on which group you're on. You're rarely gonna get time to hit those ads, and when you do, it's everyone's hitting them, and they're not gonna be alive long. Honestly, just single target, get the fight over with, move on. It doesn't count in your all-star points. Let's just get the fight over and move on, get those ads down.
Right, they're my all-star points.
Isn't that boss also better than passing?
Yeah.
Overall, at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're not going to parse at all if the boss doesn't go dead.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think we've said quite a bit for ENR. For a boss that most people should have on farm. Let's move on to MNR. Marty's currently on progression of MNR. Vedel has recently gotten him down. myself included. Actually, you know, I joined a group that was already past that, but my first time killing him was 3 weeks ago, so I'm still pretty fresh at it.
Cheater.
Yeah, right. I did cheat. I will call myself out. I cheated. I
We
jumped
left
ship.
our guild. We
Yep.
then killed Iminar. That's
Yeah,
how it went
right.
out.
Yeah. So I'm the weird link to this formula here. But so let's talk Iminar Vedel. What are things change from one platform to the next? So I think there's probably some different tidbits to know. Well, I guess not for melee, right?
Not so the melee strategy on the first platform, basically you hop between 2 points when grenades go out. The one thing I have there is if you're the person who gets sleep canister, there's no reason to move back with the group. Just stay where you are. That way, if you get it again, the group doesn't have to move, or you just don't have to move when the next one goes out. It's wasted movement. Normally not an issue for melee, but it's just something. Keeping your amount of movement down is important. This fight is actually the one that I had to heal the most, and then when we killed it, I was playing melee that night, and it was one of those fights where it's like, wow, this is a lot easier as melee. I like to laugh as the ranged have to deal with grenades. I did not know this, but ranged never get those grenades. So you really have no reason to die as melee.
You mean melee never get them?
Bridge. What was that?
You mean melee never get them?
Yeah, so melee never get those grenades. You should really just be up there with your tanks crossing that bridge. Second platform, the whole group stacks, so it's the same strategy there. But after that point, third and fourth, just going forward, melee, you kind of just need to designate with your group, okay, this is where we're going to go drop our sleep canisters. Occasionally ranged are going to move to that point, and honestly, it's kind of their fault because you need to drop it. Be mindful of your Death Knights. They can't move as quickly as the rest of you. You may have to shift as a group away from them.
So with that in mind, unless you just have an oh shit moment that night, you should probably save Wraith Walk for the latter platform.
Yeah, Wraith Walk, you probably don't want to Wraith Walk your way across the bridge as a Death Knight. You want to save that for sleep canisters. Unfortunately, on our kill, our Death Knight, I think, got it like 3 times in a row. So at that point, we just kind of said, you stand over in the corner. We'll stand as a group here. If you get it, it goes out on you. If we get it, we move to you. Because the spacing on that can be a little bit difficult, especially since you can get the ground effects dropping on you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as a melee, this is a really straightforward fight. You either can hit the boss or you can't, because he's on the other side of the bridge.
Things I have to add are the name of the game for the bridges isn't to get over them as fast as possible. It's to get them over them as safely as possible with as many people as possible alive. Don't race your tanks. Let your tanks go ahead of them. If one of them's at front clearing and they need a dispel and they haven't gotten a dispel, you know, unless you've got an empowered grenade person behind you, don't rush ahead of them. Let them get dispelled and make sure you guys are getting across the bridge safely. And obviously, not like Vedel said, make sure you are dealing with sleep canisters properly. Sleep, well, that's a lot of DPS.
Yeah, there's definitely no reason you should be getting near those people with grenades at the back.
Yeah.
That was an issue we had. Just stay up close to those tanks. Don't make sure you get stunned, but don't get too far back there.
Yeah.
There's no reason.
Marty, anything to add, or are you ready to move on?
No, sounds good to me. Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
And I would say, Marty, if moving forward, you know, if there's any points you've noticed melee or being dumb and taking a lot of damage from a healing perspective, and you have anything to offer from that perspective, feel free.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't really have too much. And I've been on standby because I'm a holy priest. I don't really like movement and healing too much. So yeah.
Yeah. Holy priests have gotten the shaft this tier. That's sure. We will move on though. We will talk Kenny G. Vedel, luckily recently you have gotten to experience the glory of Kenny G in that fight. You know?
Yeah, we got him down.
Thoughts
I
here?
actually like this fight quite a bit. it's one of those fights where positioning for ranged and melee, you kind of just become one. From a melee perspective, this fight isn't too much different from the ranged perspective. Um, the big things to know on this fight are save your cooldowns. The first ad spawns 30 minutes into the fight, so you can pop a 30-second cooldown. Um, but the big thing is timing your crosses to get over for that ad. Don't wait till the ad spawns. You have a timer. You get over to the bridge a second, right as that platform is dissipating, and you can get on it safely when you want to be over there. Because as melee, we have the advantage of we don't have any cast time, so you can drop some of your more powerful abilities right into that high debuff and drop that ad pretty quickly. That's my favorite part about this fight is that damage debuff going down. It's not something we see often, and it does favor a lot of those burst classes. Um, Once it's done, as a group, you have to dodge stuff when during that ad phase, but as melee, that's pretty straightforward. Strafe left and right out of those, and then get back across for the other ad. If you have a warlock, convince them to put a gateway between the two ads. It'll make you get over there quicker. Otherwise, save your speed boost for that. As I said before, getting to the platform, you can time that, so you shouldn't need a speed boost. One thing to note, if this is the first time you've ever done Kingaroth for some reason, if you're a rogue, enhanced shaman, feral druid, basically most of our charges, I'm not sure if it's true for warriors, if you have a targeted charge, it drops you behind the boss when you spawn in every time. It doesn't matter which way the boss is facing, you'll spawn near that platform. So raid leaders, if you have a rogue, they need to be assigned to that group. Otherwise, they're gonna have to move every time they cast death from above. It's super annoying as melee. That I can't use feral charge to get back to the boss, but I can use to get to the ad.
So weird.
Yeah, it's one of those. The boss rotates, but it drops you in one spot. There've been a couple other in the game. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I know there's been one that had the same issue. Also means don't press those buttons if Runer's going out because you're getting dropped in the same spot.
Huh. All right, good to know.
Had a couple rogues die to Runer because they used death from above and dropped right as it spun through them. Otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward fight. Killing those ads is important, and you just switch back to Kingaroth. You'll stay on the inner row along with ranged. Stay out of the nails. That's really all I have to say. Dodge Runer. It's not hard.
Yeah.
You're in melee. If the closer you are to the boss, the less you have to move to get out of the way of Runer. If you're out far, you have to run farther to stay away from Runer.
Which on Mythic you shouldn't be out far anyway.
Yeah, you shouldn't because you have to avoid bombs.
Yeah.
There are two types of melee bombs in Mythic. One of them you can dodge by running up against the boss.
Mm-hmm.
You can't actually fall into the boss, so run up to him. You'll hit an invisible wall. You can dodge that one. Otherwise, the other one, get out of it. Balls only come one direction, so always be looking to your right. If there's one there, get out. Otherwise, it's a really straightforward, repetitive fight. Depending on your kill order of the ads, things can change. But for the most part, it's dodge mechanics. Get your decimates. It decimates out. And after 4 rotations, the boss should be dead.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think you covered everything pretty well, Marty.
No, I'm good as well. Ruiner, come on, look at the boss. See where he's pointing.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, if it does the whole jerking thing where it points at one person, points at the other, most likely it's coming back. You should just be moving. Don't wait for it to come back.
Yeah.
I know we've had people got clipped by that.
I have to agree. So I know we're gonna be pressed for time here shortly, so we'll keep moving. Let's talk Verum since I know that's what you're currently working on.
Yeah, so Varamathras is another boss where ranged and melee are basically the same. Everyone basically does the same thing on the boss. depending on how you do it, you'll spread out, drop your necrotic, and get back into the group. While you're doing that, don't worry about DPSing. Obviously, you're melee, so you, for the most part, can't. Um, the big thing here is those ads that are spawning. Um, there's no reason the ad on the boss should ever not die. That just means you're being lazy and not swapping. Uh,
Oh,
No storm again.
yeah.
While we wait for Vedel's connection to reestablish itself, I have killed.
that. Can you hear me?
Maybe there.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
Hello.
We'll let you continue.
Uh, so your math is straightforward. Thing I can recommend the most: macro, into your main ability dash target shadow dash cast ability. As melee, you hit that. When the ad is up, you'll switch over instantly and hit it. Otherwise, when you hit that ability, you'll hit Vermathras. The only challenge on this fight as a melee is when the ads spawn out too far, you guys kind of need to move as a group out to kill those and then get back quickly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this boss should kind of just fall over. Possibly save your sprints and your group sprints for the necrotics during frost phase.
Crossface. Couple things to add. There are a few classes that can have some specific jobs. Shamans obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Your groups may be running the speed totems for the frost phase, right? Kind of the same concept of saving your speed, your personal speed stuff.
Yeah, we use roars and totems
Sure.
on necrotics during frost phase. We only have 2 of them, so we can't cover all of them. But this is one of those fights where you don't need feral charge and hand shot. So stop being selfish and use your totem. If you're a warrior or a rogue, most likely you're going to be assigned for marked prey. It's a really simple job. You stand in front of the group. When it goes out, you mash your charge button or your shadow step or whatever it is for rogue.
Yeah, that was the other thing I added. If you're a rogue, a demon hunter, possibly a feral druid, or a warrior, you might be tasked with dealing with the charges and stuff like that. And just make sure you're really on the ball with those, because if you don't do it timely enough, you could end up getting necrotic and wiping the group and all that stuff. So
Yeah, or if you're assigned to that, pay attention to your timer. Be hitting that charge button before it goes out, because you want to hit it the second you can, since a lot of those have a range on them.
basically, what's going on for those of you that may not know, there's a certain mechanic where a random player in the group will get targeted by the boss, and the boss will basically charge them and knock them back. And the way a lot of groups handle it is they assign a certain melee, like we were saying, the ones we listed: demon hunters, rogues, warriors, or feral druids. They will intercept that charge, and then they will use their own blink or charge, whatever, to get back to the boss and avoid getting the debuffs. And so that's what's going on. But other than that, I don't really have anything else to add. It's a very straightforward fight. Spank and spank, and I see Marty shaking his head, and also we will move on. We will talk Coven. Now at this point, I think I have the only mythic kill here, but we will talk from a heroic perspective from here on out. So with that being said, Vedel, let's talk Coven melee.
So melee on this fight's pretty straightforward. You're gonna spend a lot of time running. Have fun with that. No, our group on heroic, we actually make our DK tank the purple lady, because she doesn't actually do tank damage. So that works out well. The big thing to do here is if you have the debuff on you, there's no reason that you can't be hitting the boss unless you carry like 10 melee.
Right.
You can spread out around the boss. There's no reason to run out of the group with that. Your other melee should adjust to where you. Other than that, watch the little lightning circle under you during that ad phase, and enjoy running from ad to ad. You're not going to do good on this fight. Unless you're a feral kitty and can hit both targets because you have a 5-yard range.
Yeah.
And it makes me cry. But other than that, it's a really straightforward fight. Hope that the boss ends up at the same spot you are during the shadow phase. Try to follow that one if you can. As you get more geared, you can kind of stand in it a little bit longer and make your healers heal you. Other than that, it's one of those fights where there's gonna be a point where you are standing in a zone to be safe and you can't hit anything, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. I will throw in a piece of a little bit of tidbit for melee. Biggest thing here from my end, what I've noticed is really pay attention, like Vidal was saying, to where you're standing. Make sure you are aware of where everyone else around you is. There's going to be a lot of parts of this fight where it's going to be pertinent to give everybody ample amount of space. And if your group is melee heavy, that's going to be especially important. On Mythic, your tanks are actually going to be tanking one boss. There is a strat where melee will tank the other boss just because the boss doesn't really do much damage. So be paying, that's going to be important, as well as interrupts. There's going to be a few parts where melee are going to be assigned to doing interrupts, and you cannot miss those at all. Like,
Yes,
you have to get them.
And if there's an interrupt as melee, don't complain. It's your job. The one other thing I'd add is the blades. The purple lady who does the blades, you should just attack her.
Mhm.
When those blades go out, you can just rotate easily.
Mhm.
You'll always see where they're coming. You won't get hit by them from behind you or something.
I don't have anything else to add here from here. Marty, you got anything?
No, nothing for me. It's really a really easy episode for me. I'm being the only ranged on the show.
I'm throwing these softballs in Marty's direction every single time, and every single time he's like, "Yeah, I'm just not going to swing at this one.
I'm just
Just going to stand here."
every time.
So yeah, that's let's talk. This next boss, in my opinion, is probably the hardest boss in the raid. I think he arguably is harder than Argus. We'll talk Agrimar. From what you do know, from what you have seen, Videl, what's it like for melee on Agrimar?
From what I've seen, it's pretty much the same as ranged, from what I can tell on Mythic. I'm not sure if we get the debuff on us that afflicts other people around us. I'm assuming not. Otherwise, that boss would be terrible for melee. But otherwise, get out of your techniques. There appears to be some needing to get away from tanks. I'm not sure if that's going to cause time away from the boss or not. But it seems pretty straightforward. The biggest thing for the flames that come out as melee, a couple things I've learned: you can't run through them. Unlike some mechanics, if the graphics present, so is the damage. A lot of things you can run through before they go out. You can't do that with this one. So sidestep those. There's no reason to back up and try to get in between.
Do melee also get hit by the small AoE thing that goes off all the time?
I don't
fight.
So
I
don't-
on
only
Mythic, only the range get the circles that get bigger around them. They don't get big. I don't believe they get bigger on heroic or normal, but in Mythic they start small and they get bigger.
get bigger.
That's
Okay.
only targeted to ranged and healers. So ranged and healers, the only time you should be up on the boss is when you're dealing with technique. Other than that, for melee, like Videl said, avoid, basically be there for technique. In Mythic, you will assign 2 groups, so half your raid will take one, the other half will take the other. And then dodge the waking flames, the flames that spread out in a path. And then other than that, on the intermissions as melee, DKs obviously are going to have very specific roles. They're probably going to be grip bitches. And
Yeah,
then
get yourself a DK.
Yep. And then monks, there are some strats where, depending on your raid composition, it may be wanting your monk to run Ring of Peace to do some ad preventing to get to the boss. CC is absolutely the name of the game on the intermissions for Mythic. 100%. There's no room for error on Mythic. So if you are assigned as a melee, or any class for that matter, to any sort of CC utility or job on that fight, make sure you are doing your job. But other than that,
the only CC I'm aware of could be monks and rogues for melee.
yeah, and then and then DKs
Most
with their
likely
grips,
You won't have to deal with that.
right?
But
Yeah, because some of the strats, the DKs
Don't
will actually
paladins-
go ahead.
don't
They can't do
paladins have
elementals.
repentance?
No.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Same thing with shamans, which I find hilarious. I'm a shaman.
Right.
I control the elements. I cannot CC an element.
I ride an elemental
Oh.
as my mount. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But it used to. They didn't they
Yeah,
used to
you
be able to?
used to have hex and then bind elemental was a spell.
yeah,
Yeah.
They got rid of that because bloat.
yeah. Yeah, so that's, I mean, it's literally, execution is absolutely the name of the game on this fight. There's not much room for
Yeah.
error.
One
I
pro
know.
tip for enhanced shamans: disable Fury of the Air when you're running out. Don't be an idiot and break a CC because you forgot to turn Fury of the Air off.
Very valid. Very valid. So yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much Agamar. We will talk Argus. I don't really have much to add on Mythic yet for this one. I haven't been there yet. But we will talk heroic from what we do know.
I do
Um,
have a couple things for Mythic. There's the way the debuffs work. There's a lot of melee have to do specific things.
mhm.
You don't want more than 6 or 7 typically. But Cherry Vodka of Big Dumb Guild has a melee guide up on YouTube for it. It's very nice, very beneficial to kind of how you're gonna have to deal with those debuffs because you can't all be together. And again, maximizing your uptime on the boss is gonna be important.
Sure. We will. I will make sure to link that the video Vedel is speaking to in the show notes. Those of you that might be curious for it. So, other than that, what are some other tips and stuff for melee fight?
This fight's pretty straightforward for melee. You do the first couple phases. You do everything range does. Um, you'll hit the boss, drop your debuffs outside of the group, run back to drop your soul burst, and then move left or right, whichever way your guild does it to avoid the scythes. Um, biggest thing to know, probably for the ad phase, is make sure you have either a weak aura or you know which ads are what um, debuff they have on them or what buff. Um, most groups tend to just kill the physical really quickly because that's what all of the melee has. Um, so for most of us, especially enhanced shamans, the higher DPS increase to actually just go to wherever there's 2 target cleave, and not worry about the debuffs. Um, if you have a demon hunter, cry, as they do more damage to everything than you can ever possibly do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, on this, it's really straightforward fight. Last phase, if you're really melee heavy comp, you might have to kill the orbs that are near you. But for the most part, it's just whack the boss till it dies. Um, dodge the blue swirls on the ground. Complain if you have like 3 enhanced shamans and 3 frost DKs like we did one day, and we could not actually physically see those dropping.
Yeah.
That's something Blizzard needs to clean up. Um, but for the most part, it's a really straightforward fight.
Yep.
Again, a lot of these fights are pretty simple.
And I would say another thing to add is during the ad phase, like Vidal said, obviously pay attention to the vulnerabilities and go after obviously the physical one, and then also the one that's your kind of your whatever type of damage you do. Like assassination rogues typically poison bomb, the poison boss one. But on interrupts are important during the ad phase, and make sure you are saving your interrupts for Cosmic Beacon, not the other tasks that the ads will do, because these ads in particular, if you interrupt them to a certain point or a number of times, they will go immune to interrupts. So if you're using them on the wrong ones, that actually could hurt your group. So make sure you're saving them
And
for Cosmic Beacon.
also pay attention to the debuff. Interrupting the Cosmic Beacon late means that on the next Cosmic Beacon, you have to interrupt it late as well for that debuff. For the most part, your melee is probably going to be spread out, so you're going to either handle Cosmic Beacon on the ad you're attacking or not. If you have a ranged interrupt like Enhanced Shaman, pay attention to those around you.
Marty, you look like you were going to add something there.
Yeah, it's more like a question because obviously, yeah, I haven't played and tried this on Mythic yet, but on normal and heroic, is it just me, or does it feel like once you are through and after you're being resurrected, then it's pretty much a kill, or is it just me?
Mythic
For
is a
the
little bit
most-
different, but yeah, for the most part. Go ahead, Vidal.
I mean, I have never. I don't think I've wiped unless it was LFR after we got resurrected. So it feels like I feel like at least when we get there, when we get past and we get resurrected, then it's a sure kill, pretty much.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we've had is getting soul bursts out in time before someone dies if it's up in melee and they're a slow person. DKs. You'll get them, they'll die, which means it goes off and they're next to the group. which is a problem. But for the most part, it's normally a kill once you're resurrected. I don't actually think Argus is a challenging enough end boss for normal and heroic. I think it's a stupid long fight that doesn't really present a challenge. Probably until the very end if your healers aren't able to keep up with the healing. But most groups, the healers aren't the weak link.
To answer your question, Marty, this is the one aspect of the Mythic fight that I am familiar with. It is absolutely important on Mythic that you do not waste resing yourself, so dying unnecessarily during the last phase, because there is going to be a point where your entire raid will want to wipe and then resurrect at the same time. Most kill videos and strats I have seen, those groups are all utilizing that strat. So if you're wasting resurrections, you could potentially not have the ability for your entire raid to res, only a portion of them. And it's going to be a close kill. So just avoiding stuff and executing things properly in last phase is really important, because you have that particular moment where you're going to want to have the ability to full raid at the same time.
Yes, and on Mythic, the kill typically involves one orb. You have the last orb expands, and you have to kill the boss before it goes off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, so, I don't have anything else to add for this boss for melee. You guys? No?
No.
All shaking their head.
Straightforward.
Okay, cool. Well, I definitely want to take a moment to thank Vedel for coming on. You have been a very, very good guest. You've done everything I have asked. Provided some very good tips and tricks for melee, and yeah, man, thanks for coming on. Obviously, I'll see you and talk to you in game, as we are on the same server and play together from time to time. So, but other than that, before I hit these get out of here buttons, do either of you guys have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think Antorus is a good raid. I do think Blizzard has gotten a little bit too close to having too many bosses that are 10-minute fights. I think they are not doing that balance well enough, because honestly, when I realized Kingaroth was a 10-minute fight, I said, okay, this is stupid. This is way too long. That should be Aegirmar Argus only, but that's my only gripe with this raid instance, which means it's a good instance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this instance most of the fights, especially when I can just stand still and heal.
Which isn't often as a holy priest in this raid. No, very cool. So I want to thank those of you that have stopped by. I've seen the numbers, the viewer count fluctuate. I didn't see any questions pop through. That's okay. But for those of you that did come by and listen today, I want to thank you guys. For those of you that are listening to the audio version of this, FYI, starting with this episode and moving forward, all of our shows will be live streamed on Twitch. I will link the show in the show notes. It's twitch.tv/TRC podcast. And we are going to try to always stream. It may be a Saturday or Sunday. I will let everybody know via Twitter each time we do record. But it will usually be around the 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for those of you that want to listen and come by and say hi and stuff like that. And for those of you that just wanted the audio version, those will still come out as they are. And I apologize for any weird snafus or glitches that it might be today. This is our first time doing this live, but hopefully I will have the execution down a little bit better with each episode we do. But again, I want to thank Vedel. And other than that, I'm going to press these two buttons and we are going to get out of here.
You guys want to find Marty, you can find him over at the Blizzard podcast he does, where they talk all things Blizzard games, The Blue Recluse. If you want to find him on Twitter, you can find him at Unamathil. For me, guys, if you want to find me and personally, you can find me over on my Twitch and Twitter, which are both at Mega Irish Gaming, or you can find me on my All Things Blizzard podcast, which I do with my good friend Dusty Porter, the Blizzard Umbrella. If you want to find us here on the show, you can find us at our Twitter account, which is at _TRC podcast, or you can find us on our email, theraidersconfessional@gmail.com, no apostrophe on the S. That being said, guys, Dusty, take us out of here, my man. See ya.
Sorry, I died. Was I supposed to stand in the green puddles or the orange ones?
Hey, get together over there, bud.
This show has been hosted by Dragon Powered Studios, and the intro and outro has been brought to you by Thankful Cow Solutions.
Moo.